welcome to this, and this, as the title says, is get my review of guest booker, me just kind of talking about guest booker, with Jim Cornette, him rebooking the Invasion angle, by kayfabecommentaries.com. That's where you, that's where to get it. You can also get it. I believe ROH still might have some. I know High Spot still has a few, and of course you can go to the site itself and give them your money as well. I've not been a necessarily big fan of this series, of the guest booker series. The ones I've seen, most of them have just kind of turned off halfway through the middle of them. This one is a huge exception. I thought this one was actually very entertaining, and though I did think the Jerry Jarrett one was fascinating. I would say, simply to just hear him talk and how he would have done things, and to me, given the fact that him and Jeff had thought about buying WCW, and it was basically him booking WCW 2000, how he would have done it, and honestly, of all the ones I've seen, I think his is the one that actually, even more than this one, would actually have somewhat worked. So that is one that I've never reviewed it, but I would say that is one that I would say was good, even though I still did, because to me, guys going back fantasy booking, it's kind of interesting, but not all that fascinating. But this, of course, got a big, huge one with Jim Cornette doing the Invasion angle, because so many people see the Invasion angle as such a huge failure. And while I agree, but I think there was a lot of things to go into that. I think the Invasion angle was kind of doomed to fail from the start, because you didn't have the people who you needed signed from WCW to actually make it work. And the fact you didn't have that, I think, totally killed it right off the bat, and I think they definitely should have waited until they could have at least got those guys signed, so that you could have had, like Jim Cornette says in this video, true dream matches at the next WrestleMania. Of course, anyone that has watched me for any stretch of time knows that I have a very fond affection for Jim Cornette as far as a guy that knows the business. I love hearing him talk about the business. I love hearing him talk about wrestling history. I could sit and just listen to him forever. So to me, even though I did not agree with about 80% of what he booked, I still enjoyed it. I still found it fascinating and entertaining. There is a little bit of a shoot interview at the start, not a long one. He's done so many that he's done so many you would expect that, or not so many, but he's talked about so many of the same things over and over again, you would expect it to be just him rehashing a lot of the old things. And some of it is rehashing, but it's not the same thing. He brings up kind of different points each time, which was which I enjoyed. I enjoyed that part of it very much, and just, again, just shows how just behind, at least when he was there, kind of the problems with WWE that eventually have, in my opinion, come back and kind of haunted them now. But and throughout the booking thing, he does kind of shoot on guys and talk about guys, and I think that's pretty fascinating too. Let's see so his booking of the Invasion angle is very different. And one of my big things, I love Jim Cornette, like I said, but he did the exact same thing everybody always does, and I'm always like, why do you do this? Because this automatically is true fantasy booking. If you're gonna do a WCW Invasion angle, as much as people are gonna hate me saying it, as much as people are gonna say, yeah, but then it wouldn't work, well then you shouldn't have done it. WCW cannot be face. Can't happen. They're not ECW. They don't have that die-hard cult-like following ECW did. Remember, when WCW died, a lot of people were like, well, at least they're out of their misery. It was kind of that sort of feeling. It wasn't like when ECW died and people were kind of like, oh my god, this is horrible, this is that. And maybe that's just me. I'm sure Dante Savage, one of them, will come on here and gripe about it, but sorry, that's just kind of the way. I think that's the way most people kind of felt about it. Even though we probably shouldn't have, because it as Jim Cornette said, Vince basically was the only game in town. Cornette does do what originally was planned, and if you don't know what was originally planned for the Invasion angle, and then they changed it, was basically to give both shows, but basically make SmackDown Nitro and give, keep Raw as Raw, and basically have two completely different shows with two different types of things. Basically what you have now, but basically WCW and WWE. So he does that, which I have no problem with that. Never had any problem with that. I've said on here before, I think that was more of a better way to go than what we saw happening with just the brand split. There's a lot of ideas in this DVD that I absolutely love. There's a lot of baseline thinking, at least, just initial, when you strip everything away, kind of concepts that I think would have worked. But there's a lot of things I don't think would have. Particularly, he felt like his whole kind of mentality going on in this, and he's right, was that if you do an invasion angle, the fans have to believe it. One of the reasons why the NWO worked was because the fans believed it. Now, I think they believed it because Hall and Nash, everybody knew, for the most part, Hall and Nash seemed like guys that were just friends. They seemed like guys who had attitudes. You believed that they both would come in and they would both start trouble because they were, you remembered how they were in the WWE. You remembered that whole thing. And the smart fans that kind of knew, and the fans were starting to get smarter at this point, knew that, they legitimately liked being around each other. They had good chemistry, all of that sort of thing. Much of the same way, like the Horsemen. You didn't have to, come up with some way to convince people the Horsemen liked being around each other. You could see that they just belonged with each other. And then you added Hogan, and you added the fact that here's Hogan, who is seen as, a guy from the outside, who's never seen as a WCW guy, and he's now going to be with all three of them. Hogan being a heel for the first time, it just all worked, and you believed it. And that was sort of his whole concept behind this, was believing it. Believing, you had to make the fans believe it, and I agree with that. However, he took it a step further than probably I would have, where he started doing these work shoots, kind of like what Vince Russo was doing, and to me, that is a mistake, because I think one of the things that pro wrestling fans, even though as they've gotten smarter as far as the business goes, it's just like, if you talk to somebody who watches soap operas, regular soap operas you can see on any TV thing, they talk about those characters like those characters are real, even though they know they're not. Even though they know it's a TV series, even though, and they're trying to guess where things are going. Wrestling has always been considered, seen as a soap opera type thing. So I don't think you have to try to convince the fans that it's real again. I think you just have to give them a reason to believe that it's real. Such as he came up with this concept of that he was going to send William Regal to Nitro, have William Regal take on Chris Benoit, and basically, they were going to have a true shoot fight. To me, that's pointless, and then he was going to, and on all the after effects of that, to me, that's kind of pointless. To me, it's better, for example, if you just have Vince tell William Regal, I don't care if you win or lose, just hurt him, break his arm, cripple the crippler, that sort of thing. And then you go over there, you have Chris Benoit, say, I saw what Vince said, he wants you to hurt me, William, I got a lot of respect for you, I know you're a tough guy, you come over here trying to do that with me, they call me the crippler for a reason, I'll do the same thing to you. And you do, as he said, a hard style type fight, which looks very different from what you normally see from the WWE, and fans start going, ooh, what's this? This is different. He's actually, that sort of thing, where it looks like the guy. The fans will kind of go along with it. Either they go along with it or they won't, and I think that would be a better way to go. He pretty much booked from WrestleMania to WrestleMania, which was pretty good. I didn't agree with his WrestleMania card. I thought his WrestleMania card definitely did not have the dream matches that so many of us would have liked to have seen at the time. And one other thing, speaking of dream matches, he got to the end of the DVD and he said that, there were no dream matches left, and I disagree. Because I think there's still one dream match still left from that, and as much as, people will say, I can't believe you're bringing that up, but it's true. People still want to see Undertaker versus Sting. Think about it. Anytime anyone does one of these, super, dream cards, they always have Undertaker versus Sting. People still want to see that. Will we ever see it? I don't have a clue. But, you know, so there's at least one match out there that they would want to see. I know a dream match that I would want to see if he had asked me. I said, well, I'd like to see Joe as the outsider, the guy that has never, you know, was never given a chance in the WWE for various reasons, comes in, that's what you're looking for, and he takes on Triple H. That's always been a dream of mine. You know, just like ECW, the ECW fans that were at One Night Stand 2, their dream match, literally, I think if you would have asked them, as much hate and enough venom as they spewed towards John Cena, they would much rather have loved that to have been Triple H. I don't know if it would have been as hateful. I definitely think it would have been a different vibe. People would have been like, are you going to do the job? You better do the job. We will kill you if you don't do the job. Where I think with Cena, it was more of not that Cena didn't want to lose, but more that the WWE wouldn't let Cena lose. You see what I'm saying? But I definitely think that there's still some dream matches out there still. Not probably many, and it's probably mostly with the hardcore guys. Hardcore people who actually are aware that TNA exists. But there is that. So, but overall, I thought the DVD was at least entertaining. You know, I could always listen to Jim Cornette talk about wrestling. Even if I don't agree with what he's saying, I can always at least listen to what Jim Cornette's saying. So, I definitely think on that end of it, this is probably the best one. Definitely not the best booked one, like I said. I think the Jerry Jarrett one is probably better. As I could actually see that one somewhat working. The other ones I've seen, I'm always like, this is kind of, I don't know about that. But, and you know, hindsight's 20/20 anyways. You know, there's a lot of stuff that we don't know what happened, and Jim Cornette talks about that. Jim Cornette talks about the fact that we were having fun. But his whole point was, he came up with a viable year-long storyline in 4 hours. He said basically it took him 4 hours to do, and while I disagreed with a lot of it, I at least understood where it was coming from, and it did have some base. The base principle of what he was saying, I think, would have worked. I just think the execution of that, I don't think, would have necessarily worked. So he does get kind of a thumbs up for that part of it. But I definitely would not agree with it. But not that Jim Cornette's going to care what I think anyways. But anyways, that's just kind of my review. You know, this was a pretty big deal when people saw this. And, of course, people have always, you know, wanted the invasion angle to be different. And to me, it's, you know, it pretty much played out as it was going to with the guys involved. If you weren't going to bring in the guys that people wanted to see, then you shouldn't have done the invasion angle anyways. You know, and WCW had for the most part had to be, at least when they were on Raw, they had to be heels. You could probably work out something else later, but overall, as I said, an interesting DVD, an entertaining DVD. Don't agree with the booking at all. I don't think the booking would have worked at all. So if you're going to judge it on that, I would say not to watch it. But if you just want to see Jim Cornette talk about wrestling, great DVD to get, as is pretty much any DVD that Jim Cornette would see. So with that, I'm out. Have a good one. Later.